I really think it's time that the city took some action against the property that was sold to them for urban renewal, especially for the piece where the parking lot is. We could, for the best interest of this community, we could acquire 75 parking spaces and get the best utilization out of that lot. All they continue to do is people that come into our community who are doing business in that area throughout the entire summer months, not knowing or excited and hurried to pull in and think it's a municipal parking lot, have their cars towed on a number of occasions throughout the entire summer, with no consideration of the Saratogian property owners to even allow the city to consider the management of that parking lot and keeping it that downtown area clean, where it could best benefit all the businesses in that area. I would love to see us look at this situation. If we could possibly start a procedure by the city attorney in reference to this, might bring property owners to the table, at least bring it to the table so we can talk to them about getting some better utilization from that parking lot. Is there any opposition to the council for our city attorney to look into the aspect of proceeding with some mechanism of taking that property back for use for the entire city?
I think we need to talk to the city attorney. You're talking about taking that property for eminent domain?
Yes.
Taking anybody's property for eminent domain that doesn't do what you want them to do with it? Is that what you're
Well, doing for the best interest of the city. We've done in the past. We took a piece to utilize for our parking, or for our public safety. For public safety? I think that was me.
No, it wasn't.
I see. Shut it off. I think that was.
I think there is some specific.
Yeah, that's something I think we could look at, or at least move it. Let's get these people to the table. There's no reason for them to tie up that piece of property any longer. All they do is have office space there. The printers have moved. You know, they have the audacity not even send a letter back and say, look, we're really not even interested. Just completely ignore the city. Completely ignore the city, any other business that we were doing business with in this city. And certainly I think we'd be outraged if they wouldn't at least attempt to work with the city in an area where they got 75 parking spaces right adjacent to our business district. Now they don't have 75 people working in that newspaper to tie up that entire lot. They used our lot on many occasions when they had various things happening, and their people used to park in lots over here. We never complained to that. If we could only at least get them to the table for some discussion, if it means proceeding for eminent domain, I would have no problem supporting that whatsoever.
Mayor Bank, and I would have to forward these documents to City Attorney Engler. And again, Commissioner McTygue has a better history of this. When they took that property over, and I tried reading the deed and going through it, it keeps mentioning all this other stuff, and I just couldn't figure it out because I'm not an attorney. But it was my understanding from talking to previous mayors, talking to some previous city attorneys, that there was an agreement that the Saratogian would leave that open as public parking at night. And but I can't figure it out from reading it. I'll get that information that I have and be more than happy to pass it to the city attorney. But they may indeed be in violation of their agreement when they took that property over in the 60s or whatever it was.
Yeah, that's why the agreement.
I would like to echo that back about what seems like almost 100 years ago when I was chairing the Blue Ribbon Parking Committee. Some members of our committee also tried to establish contact, as Mr. McTygue did, and we were met with the same non-response as well. I would think that there are also, and I don't remember the gentleman's name, but some people in the planning department, when I first came into office, suggested that, as Mr. Frank had said, that maybe it's not, I don't know, a violation, but actually how they acquired the property may in fact be a question. And because of the need that we all understand as business owners, as politicians, as residents, let's start uncovering this a little bit if we have the tools to do so. Maybe we start right in the planning department with our own attorneys to look at this and get some interpretation. Get the council to read what's available. We can make our own judgments so we can proceed. I think it's a worthwhile task for us to undertake and study. Not that we don't have other things to do, but this is a worthwhile thing to do and see what level of cooperation we may be able to get. So I would support, in theory, all of us uncovering some details here.
Mayor, would you have a problem with that? It is the city council make a recommendation that the city attorney who works for the city council to look into this matter and bring a report back to the city council.
I think if there are some details that you can provide, I don't know, you need to speak to the city attorney.
Yeah, I don't have it with me tonight, but I can grab that information because it related to urban renewal. It talked about books and pages and all this stuff, and I tried to find it, and I got to a certain end, and
Tony, you should have a little history on some of this. You can help us with it so we can get some of this and get to the bottom line on this, because it's really, it's an embarrassment, it's an insult to this community that they wouldn't even get back to the city. They're non-residents of this community. We do have residents that work in there, but they can work in an office up in the town of Wilton or the town of Greenfield as well as they could here. Their printing is being created out of Troy now, and it's no longer printing presses in the basement of that Saratogian office.
Only one brief comment, Commissioner. I've done one, I think those are 2 eminent domain proceedings with the city, and they tend to be rather long and very procedural, very protracted. It may be just one of a number of solutions you want to consider before you go over with this.
Well, that's what we're talking about, Tony. We're talking about looking into and all the information we can put together on how they acquired the property, and if it is a possibility, they should be utilizing that property to be used by the city also. So we'd like to look at that because, as far as I'm concerned, I support taking that piece of property.
You know, I certainly think it's a worthwhile endeavor because our department gets a lot of phone calls from people who assume that the city has towed their vehicle from that parking lot because they are very aggressive, particularly in the evenings when there's a lot of activity down there, of towing any vehicle of a visitor to our city who mistakenly parks in the building, the parking lot, thinking that it's a city-owned lot. So I certainly support investigating. I guess the approach that I think we ought to take on this first is this is a large corporation. They are obviously interested in the support of this community. You know, basically our citizens are their customers. I think an approach that looks at the issue of a corporate good neighbor and how they conduct themselves is probably initially at least more productive than the hard-charging litigation. And this is coming from an attorney. I just think that there's a lot of pressure that could be borne upon them for the fact that they are sitting in a city amongst all their customers, and they ought to recognize that being a good corporate neighbor is important to their bottom line. So I certainly support the exploration of all the avenues, but you know, I think perhaps putting a little more pressure on them to respond to us also is important.
And I'm sure the city attorney would be willing to pursue contacting if we can get some documentation.
Yeah, I should have that tomorrow. I have most of it here, but it's kind of disjointed, so I'll get it together and get it to your office tomorrow.